commonly referred to as the ACFR, which combines a management discussion and analysis with comprehensive statistical data that is independently audited by the State Board of Accounts. The ACFR is the material evidence of our state's financial position, which for fiscal year 2026, we expect to continue with low debt, well-funded pensions, and healthy cash reserves, all of which support our AAA credit rating from Standard & Poor's, Moody's, and Fitch. Arriving to this announcement day requires the great diligence and dedication of many public servants. And I want to express my deep appreciation to the Office of Management and Budget, the state budget agency, to the agencies at large, and to my staff in the State Comptroller's Office. Their thorough work and partnership helped bring fiscal year 2026 to a successful close. Now, it is my great honor to turn it over to Secretary Lisa Hirschman.
Thank you so much. What a pleasure it is to be here with all of you today. I am unbelievably grateful to be able to serve as the Secretary of Management and Budget and the Chief Operating Officer for this great state of Indiana. Thank you to Governor Braun and his leadership. He has been consistent with his emphasis on affordability, right-sizing government, and has maintained a fierce focus on the needs of our citizens. Thank you for the partnership of Comptroller Nishalla and your amazing team, along with our other statewide leaders. And of course, we appreciate the partnership of the legislators who help us make these efforts turn into meaningful results. Just to hit a few points here that dovetails into what Comptroller Nishalla said about our fiscal performance. A few notable items. Indiana didn't just protect its AAA rating, we've earned it. That rating keeps our cost of capital low, allowing us to invest in more Hoosier priorities without burdening taxpayers. And in a year when the markets sent mixed signals, Indiana's fiscal discipline ensured that we stayed ahead of a headwind and not behind it. We budget with prudence, not optimism. We understand that we have been given the responsibility to be good stewards of taxpayer dollars. That's why we held the growth of state government to 1%, which is down from 3.9% in fiscal 25. Our cautious forecasting meant we anticipated national shifts, from revisions in wages and personal income to major movements in financial markets, and we planned accordingly. Indiana never waited for conditions to improve. We positioned ourselves to succeed no matter the cycle. I think it's important as a state that we remain nimble to be able to respond to in a more proactive way. Even in a world full of geopolitical uncertainty, Indiana has never wavered in delivering the services people can count on. Global volatility, federal policy changes, economic recalibrations did not shake our commitment to Hoosiers. We stayed steady so Hoosiers could stay secure. Indiana is and remains the fiscal envy of the nation. States across the country look to our model because stability isn't a slogan here, it's a standard. From strong administrative performance to disciplined long-term investments, Indiana shows what sustainable stewardship looks like. We've evolved from balancing a checkbook to managing an investment portfolio. This has allowed us to make important investments, such as $200 million in childcare. Today, Indiana's finances aren't just about tracking transactions. They're about shaping long-term opportunity. We monitor not just revenues and expenditures, but economic indicators such as market performance, business growth, and household financial strength, ensuring every decision supports future prosperity. Fiscal responsibility isn't about spending more, it's about spending smarter. Just by way of example, we're taking a hard look at contracts. One of our early contract reviews was in fleet. We have been able to reduce the per unit cost by over $3,700 per vehicle, and that's how we're working smarter. Our targeted investments in children, infrastructure, innovation, jobs, fleet, equipment, all of it, create the higher wage economy Hoosiers deserve. That's why Indiana continues to prioritize projects that deliver long-term value and keep administrative costs among the lowest in the nation. And finally, our message is simple. Indiana plans ahead, invests wisely, and delivers consistently. That's how we protect every taxpayer dollar and how we build a stronger future for the state. Even with mixed national indicators, Indiana's trajectory remains clear, stable, strategic, and poised for continued growth. Again, thank you for being here and your interest in our fiscal state. And with that, I have the pleasure of turning it over to one of my key leaders in OMB, Chad Ranney, State Budget Director.
Thank you, Comptroller Nishalla, Secretary Hirschman. I had a sort of a strategic decision to make. After following the two of them, it's tough to come with prepared remarks, and so I'm just going to shoot from the hip and leave it to them, and I'll talk to the surplus statement a little bit, and then we'll open it for questions from there. As Comptroller Nishalla mentioned, we ended the fiscal year incredibly strong, but it was not without its own effort and work. And so I do want to thank the Comptroller's Office, the Office of Management and Budget, but the agencies across the state. That's true for both the executive branch, separately electeds, and everybody else. Without the commitment to fiscal responsibility that everybody showed, the results that you have on the papers in front of you wouldn't be possible. And so with that, I'll start at the top of the surplus statement. I think folks are handing them out, and if people are watching online, they are available on the State Budget Agency's website and should be up and available now. So with that, we'll kind of go down and talk about revenues first. And that's been the big driver, I think, of a lot of headlines, is where our revenue is at. We don't find out about spending and some of the bottom line numbers until later on in the year, but we do see revenues increasing to close out fiscal year 26 by nearly 7%. Ending at just over $24 billion in general fund revenue. That is a significant amount of money, and it's not lost on me that that is your money. Working down then, we do see impressive numbers across the board, a reduction in augmentations, again, directly attributable to the work agencies have done to reduce spending. The governor has consistently pressed agencies to do more with less while delivering great results for Hoosiers, and I can say across the board, state agencies have done that. Again, not just executive branch agencies, but separately elected offices and the other branches of government as well. Consistently doing more with less has led us to a place where the cost of government has only grown by 1%. Years prior, we saw a 19.5% increase in the cost of government, followed by a nearly 4% increase in the cost of government. And so I am proud to stand here today to say that we have reduced that growth to 1%. That is a monumental task. That has then left us revenue and reduced spending with a $1.6 billion annual surplus that feeds into the larger $3.99, nearly $4 billion combined balances that we currently have. That fiscal strength, as Secretary Hirschman mentioned, is one of the main reasons for our AAA rating, our lower cost of capital, our ability to invest in Hoosiers, our ability to invest in childcare, our ability to take measures the governor has taken to increase affordability for Hoosiers, whether that come through the gas tax suspension or these historic investments in early child care, the $200 million that's gone in this last fiscal year, and I'm certain more to come down the road. That's also resulted in roughly $470 million being put back in the Medicaid reserves. This is something for a long time, right? Indiana has spent down its Medicaid reserves as we've dealt with other issues in our ability to control the spend in Medicaid. Being able to return our Medicaid reserves to historical levels is something we should all be proud of, and certainly I know Secretary Rowe is doing more work in that regard. With that, I will turn it over to questions, so feel free, your time, ask me about your money. Thank you.
How has the suspension of gas tax impacted the late numbers at the very end of the fiscal year, and also the governor's decision to reimburse the local governments for the lost revenue?
I apologize. How has it impacted?
Let me just re-ask it.
Yeah.
How did the gas tax suspension impact these numbers, and also the governor's decision to reimburse the locals for the lost revenue?
Yeah, so great question, two-part question there. So the first thing is it does not impact these numbers. So I want to be clear. We are talking about the general fund surplus, general fund numbers. Gas taxes are dedicated revenues that go into dedicated funds that fund roads in Indiana, whether it's the state highway fund, the local road and vehicle highway account. Might have stumbled over the name there a little bit, but the taxes that were suspended feed directly into those accounts, thus then flowing into INDOT's budget and ability to maintain highways, or local units of government's ability to maintain roads. So the decision to suspend it has not impacted these numbers. Now, how did these numbers impact the decision to suspend? I think the governor has been very clear about that. Indiana's incredible fiscal strength at the moment is what's allowed us to suspend those taxes and have revenue potentially now here in the general fund to backfill the state highway fund. I think that's the big thing, right, is as the state Board of Finance takes the actions that we've announced we're going to take to make locals whole, all of those actions are being taken. I see Treasurer Elliott in the back. Thank you, sir, for joining. Also on the Board of Finance. All of those transfers will come out of the state highway fund. If the forecasts are correct, it's roughly $500 million. Again, we are now sitting on nearly $4 billion, of which a portion can be used if the legislature deems fit to backfill or to pay back the state highway fund. Did I answer your question?
Yes.
Thank you.
Does that money from that you were talking about, coming from the state highway fund, is that reflected in the
It is not.
fund reserve?
It is not, no, sir. This is general fund balances only is what's.
So would it take action by the legislature to backfill what INDOT is not receiving?
That's correct.
The
Transfer
funds that
from
go-
general fund back to state highway fund.
So there's nothing the state Board of Finance can do to support the state, the INDOT revenue that has been foregone?
Yeah, I think I have not looked at everything that could potentially be done. I think the appropriateness of it is that's certainly a question better left, policy question better left to the General Assembly than myself as the budget director working in concert with the Comptroller and the Treasurer.
But right now, with the gas tax that's been foregone that would normally go into INDOT, that's not being backfilled at this.
Not at this moment, no, sir.
Madam Comptroller, question for you. Obviously, it's good news when the state's in strong, good, solid fiscal health. But what's your message to local governments who have to deal with all their fiscal issues right now? We got the Senate Enrolled Act 1 is really going to hit them with their budget this go around. So I can see like a mayor saying, no, this is good news for the state. They can brag about their good fiscal health, but we're screwed.
Coming from local government, I do see AIC and AIM here on a regular basis, and my message to them is stay involved. They have excellent representation here, and it is a statewide effort to make sure that in Indiana, we recognize first that by and large we have a low tax structure, and then how can we work together to accomplish two things: make it more stable and more simple. So, and I always say to them, I am at your service to help them navigate the changes and to make sure that we all understand them and can execute well.
Question for all three of you. Could you talk about the process to backfill the gas tax revenue that the state has lost to this point, and when could locals expect to see that revenue?
Thank you, great question. As Director Rani had mentioned, that it will take legislative involvement in order for us to move that money. And I have to, again, give a shout out to the three members of the Board of Finance, Daniel, who's here, as well as Comptroller Nishalla and her team. We are working through the number crunching right now to make sure we have the right numbers for the locals. The Board of Finance next meeting, I believe it's next week, will review that. And then we are going to do the April-May tranche of reimbursement that the locals will start to see in early August. And then we will review the last 2 months of that will likely hit in September in October. It's important that we do the proper number crunching to get those exact numbers for the Board of Finance to review.
So just to be clear, any reimbursements to the local governments that have to get legislative approval?
Board of Finance.
Board of Finance.
Yeah, so State Budget Agency is working on the number crunching with others, and then it will go to the Board of Finance for review, and then we will be able to process that relatively quickly within a matter of weeks so that they can start seeing their numbers and continue on with their strategic plans.
And those distributions will be coming from the State Comptroller's office, and they will be top priority as soon as they are approved.
The last thing I'll add here is there are, and I see other members of the Comptroller's office back here that I'd love to tag in and lean on. Fred, talking about you here. 23 or so revenue sources that make up the distributions to the local units of government. Gas tax, gasoline excise tax are only 2 of those revenue sources. So local units of government are continuing to receive their monthly distributions. They are just monthly distributions that are light 2 of the revenue sources. So just to clarify, it is they are still receiving monthly distributions. We will just make them whole over these next 4 months.
Besides discussion about highway funding going forward, already, some of the administration's already committed to more funding towards child care programs. With the size of the cash reserves now and better revenues coming in, is there sufficient to do that and to take on more initiatives than there were when you were putting the budget together 2 years ago?
To answer your question, look, we evaluate all the priorities on a continuing basis. So what we've done is presented to the governor what priorities we need, where investments make sense, and everything is on the table for his review.
But you intend to go forward with the child care funding increase that Secretary Rowe talked about a few weeks ago?
Yes, with Secretary Rowe and Adam Olson from OECOSL have been in ongoing discussions with OMB and the State Budget Agency on a regular basis, and they are continually keeping us apprised of what their recommendations are and the value that it will deliver.
The thing I'll add to that is on the surplus statement, you do see about 4/5 of the way down, negative $200 million from the Fiscal Responsibility Opportunity Growth Fund, the FROG Fund. I think others who have been around State Budget Committee have heard me refer to these as fragmentations instead of augmentations. But that $200 million that you see reflected there was approved by Budget Committee, I want to say 2 meetings ago, and has already been transferred to OECOSL and FSSA for deployment in the voucher program consistent with the presentation they gave the Budget Committee.
Governor Braun earlier this morning said that the state will end race and sex-based contracting preferences. Again, a question for all 3 of you, and I know this also may be an IDOA question, but how do you see that affecting the state's finances moving forward? And are there any concrete examples of where these preferences led to overspending in a certain project, or maybe a project that was finished well past the due date?
That sounds like a question from only 2 of them. I'm going to back away from that.
No, it's a great question, and what we're seeking to do is we looked at this very carefully. IDOA reports into my organization, and we've looked at the what it has created. I don't have actual numbers for you, but I could be happy to circle back. There are examples, and there's quite a few, where it has actually not necessarily done any favors to the subcontractors. And so we're looking at how do we make this more inclusive? How do we shift to a small business program where the majority of the folks that are qualifying in the diversity space now would also qualify? And I think the thing that's most exciting is currently that cohort is only allowed to be a sub and not a prime. The well-crafted and well-designed small business program, they can also become a prime vendor. So I think it opens the aperture for opportunities for these businesses. And we're developing that now and making sure that we do our best to do no harm and make sure we're more inclusive with our programs.
We have
Lisa.
time for one more question.
Lisa, to piggyback on what Hannah had to ask about minority subcontractors and the whole 9 yards, I suppose the question is, as you go forward to manage the state's finances properly and accordingly as you should, are those contracts going to stay in effect and then they'll just expire on their own time, or will this sort of be sort of retroactive? Sorry, the governor issued this executive order, which may or may not conflict with the statute. The contract goes away now, or just won't be renewed if it falls into this category?
Right now, we are going to honor all existing contracts and make sure that there is no adverse disruption to anything that's currently in place. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. We'll be issuing the press release shortly.